Hello and welcome to the Startups of London podcast. I'm your host Ozan and the founder of Startups of London. Today, I'm joined by Nick Browne, co-founder of Devyce. They actually have three co-founders, and we have Nick today representing the whole team and the whole company. He was feeling bad today, but he was so kind to not skip the podcast, so we're privileged to have him today. Welcome, Nick.
Thank you very much, Ozan. Lovely to be here. Yeah, COVID has finally got me. But I couldn't let you down short notice. So here I am.
Get well soon.
Thank you.
So my first question to you is Devyce, or rather, let's start with what Devyce is for the people who have not heard about your company before. I've been doing some online research, so let's get everyone up to speed. What does Devyce do? Can you tell us about the value proposition you have?
Sure. So I think the two-sentence elevator pitch or investment pitch is Devyce lets UK and European companies give all their employees work phone numbers on whatever device they want, wherever they are, while improving customer experience at the same time. Our unique relationship with the UK mobile network gives us direct access to worldwide telecom networks and allows us to expand globally. That's the elevator pitch and an overview. But essentially what our product does is we allow sales managers and sales teams to all have 1, 2, 3, 4 multiple numbers, landline or mobile, on their personal handset, which removes the need for second handset provision. And also it allows, through our management portal, managers and sales team managers to have access to call recordings, live call listening, reading messages, providing numbers very quickly, call groups, AI call routing. It's just a whole unified new way of looking at the mobile telephone for business use in a nutshell.
I like it. And you were part of the YC 2022 cohort, right?
That's correct. Yeah. So the company was bootstrapped mainly by the co-founders up until earlier this year. And we thought, right, we're in a good position. We've got 3,000 customers all around the world. We're at the stage now where we think we can grow significantly with a capital injection. We were recommended to and advised to apply to Y Combinator. Obviously, it's the number one accelerator in the world. It's hugely prestigious for any tech company to get up to. We applied in March, thinking, well, I think we've got a pretty good chance because we've got doing good revenue sort of at that time. $30,000 a month recurring revenue with some good customers and a product fit. And we thought, yeah, let's go for it. But as like all of these things, not really put too much hope into it because who knows the percentage chance. I mean, I think they only took sort of 1 or 2% of their applications, and I think they had over 20,000 companies apply. But yeah, so we got through to the interview, had a 10-minute interview with those guys, and I got the call at 2 a.m. that same night. So, obviously local time in San Francisco, and I was in London at 2 a.m. and
PST is difficult to work.
Yeah. Got the great news, and it's been unbelievable for us. The Y Combinator experience has been brilliant. There's about 4 weeks left. We went out to San Francisco for the batch retreat and met all the other amazing companies, and the group partners have been brilliant. And it's not just the money they give you, obviously that's brilliant, but it's just the whole insight into how the best way to succeed when you're starting a business and the best and the pitfalls to avoid, more importantly. So yeah, I can't speak more highly of Y Combinator. The whole experience has been brilliant.
Yeah, money is money. It creates basically the same thing, regardless of who you receive it from, wherever in the world. But the expertise, the know-how, and as just you said, the unique insight that you gain from organizations like YC, they're pretty out of the standard. It's a privilege in a way, I'm thinking, because not all people, even people who have a lot of money, cannot access that. It's a different type of a filter. So I'm curious to hear you, like when you said we've gathered a lot of unique insights from YC. What were they? What did you learn? Well, what can you share with us?
Without giving away sort of the trade secrets and the inside knowledge, but I think that the fact is that on our Slack channel now, when we have weekly check-ins with our 5 group partners who guide us and advise us through this process, they're all people and individuals who have raised capital in the past, that have started business in the past and sold them for, in some instances, hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. That's great. Obviously amazing to be led and advised by these people. But they also have visiting group partners and other group partners who are at YC permanently, who have run businesses who haven't succeeded. So they've run businesses where they've raised 30, 40, $50 million in some cases, and they've still died. So it's very good. You can see both sides of the coin, and they give you they take you through the path to think, look, just
Yeah.
because you've raised this money, that's not a check mark. You're going to exit for a lot of money, and you're going to have a big success. There's still pitfalls, there's still mistakes to make, and they just give you a framework of just the best way to approach problems with your company internally or externally, and the best way to approach it. Yeah, and it's just a framework they give you, and it's a proven formula, and it's been brilliant.
It is around problem solving, thinking critically. I've been following their content for a while now. It's been about 6 years. So
Yeah.
yes, they've got a few things right. Perhaps my one criticism, like this is not about YC, but just one comment here, is that it seems to be that their perspective is kind of based on the reality of a startup in the US with a certain set of privileges assumed. So it might be different building startups in different parts of the world, even in the UK. That's something
Yeah.
that had surprised me, right? It's different than so when you say I'm an entrepreneur, people understand a different thing and they treat you differently in the UK versus in the US. Like, so this and the other things, that's my only perhaps little criticism or critique of what YC gets not entirely correct. But other than that, I think it's an amazing experience.
I think that's just the landscape of starting your own business globally is so different from country to country.
It is, yeah.
And just even for the VC funds and the angels that we've spoken to previously before we got into YC in the UK, their outlook, fundraising, and KPIs that they look out for whilst investing in companies are just so different for starting a company in the US, for example. So I think it is. Yeah, you're not wrong there. It's very different country to country, and I think whilst the UK is a good place to start a company, it's very easy to set up a company, and with the SEIS and EIS tax schemes, I think a really good way of limiting the risk for the investor and also helping small companies get funding straight away. I do think it is quite the larger landscape for fundraising is a little bit harder than the rest of the world because I think investors, or certainly this is our experience, investors in the UK are a lot more risk adverse. They
Yes,
want sort of
definitely.
they want almost guarantees that they're going to get their money back in some way, shape, or form. Whereas global in other geographies, it's not so risk adverse. People understand that you're a startup, you're raising money because you need to fix problems, or you haven't got exact product market fit, or you need to scale, and that's why you're raising investment. Whereas UK investors, sometimes you get the impression that they almost expect you to be nearly the finished article before they even give you the money,
Exactly.
which is very difficult.
You should have discovered your avenues for a great revenue, and then have a lot of proof that everything works and the business is sustainable and is going to grow. It's basically the difference between so I think money thinks in different ways. Money in the UK thinks about protecting itself. It's kind of like this generational wealth and protecting it as much as you can versus the mindset in the US for money seems to be take risk, double down. How do I 2x my money? How do I quadruple my money? Is usually like the idea of greed is good. Of course, it's not in a lot of contexts, but that was a guy, I think it was in a film called.
Yeah,
That's kind of
I
the
think
different way the money thinks, right? In a way.
globally as well, investors seem to take more of I'm going to invest in 20, 30, 40, 50 good businesses with the hope that sort of three or four or five get me a good return and do well, rather than UK investors seem to, it's rounds and rounds and rounds of due diligence and analysis on a much smaller amount of companies and sort of putting all your eggs in one basket, so to speak. So I think that, yeah, it's very different. It's very different from country to country.
It is. Let us zoom back to the business Devyce for a
Yes.
second, because I'm really curious about a few things you are doing. My first question about the business specifically, perhaps counterintuitively, is that what I observe from where I stand personally, and I might be wrong, as I said, is that people are using, especially generations who are younger than millennials, are using telephone conversations less and less and less as a way of communicating. So does this not go counter to the idea of building a company like Devyce?
So our product is not Well, let's go back to day one. When we started the business, we thought, right, who can we get to test our product whilst building it because and pay at the same time. When we started Devyce, our main customer was B2C customers who were using the product, sole traders, freelancers, but also people who just wanted a second number for if they were overseas and they still wanted to get their SMS verification text or didn't want to pay roaming fees, etc., etc. So that was how we built our foundation of thousands of people using the product just so we could get the robust nature of it. But really, Devyce is fundamentally, I mean, the reason why it was built was to supply to businesses and to sales teams. Any business globally has 10, 20, 30, 40 staff. Anyone that is currently supplying their staff with business handsets and business mobiles. And I haven't got a crystal ball, but I don't think in the next 10, 20, 30 years, people aren't going to be communicating at work without using phones. They're still going to be dialing. They're still going to be calling clients. They're still going to be calling customers. Yes, Zoom calls and Google Meets, et cetera, are the future of business meetings, but people are still going to pick up the phone. And I don't think that's going to go away. And the mobile phone number is going to be here for a long time to stay. I think that if you asked me in the early 90s, even though I was quite young, and said, oh, what's going to go first? I would have said, oh, the landline. The landline's going to be gone. But we're all still dialing 020 numbers. Restaurants all still have landlines. The offices all still have traditional copper wire handsets, which interestingly enough, are getting removed in 2025. So any business landline, copper wire landline is going to be removed. And all of these,
Why is that?
And that it's just the way the world is going. They're removing that all that legacy telephony systems are getting removed, and it
So
will
it's going to be
all have to
mobile with all of them. Is that the case?
so it all has to go to VoIP. Yeah, all has to go to
Voice
a
over.
system such as ours. So, which is why we think we're in a good position to build the brand over the next couple of years, and then hoover up a lot of this business. So yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. The younger generations, it's a lot more messaging based, which obviously our system does. But yeah, I don't think that business and the way the world is run is not going to be on the mobile phone for a long time. So, and that's why Devyce we think is going to win.
I mean, it's a certain dimension of the business you have to be aware of and
Yeah,
think critically about going into the next years as well. But I'm sure you're aware of this. I was
yeah,
curious as a user and what you thought about this. The other thing seems to be telecommunications industry has had this issue of value added services and how to grow the business. And I remember when I worked in telecoms, like this debate was how do we become a value added company versus just an infrastructure provider? How do we become a technology company, an innovation company, right? That was the word on the street, if I
yeah.
might say. That was what all the talk was about. And now I look at the telecom companies around the world and I see almost none who have made that leap. They kind of devolved into, in a lot of ways, infrastructure operators from my personal perspective. But what you are doing, I think, is really interesting because it is actually the exact direction telecom companies wanted to pursue, which is, yes, there is a component of a line, which perhaps there's a psychological aspect to that as well, because it's something we are used to, right? But then you go and add a lot of services and functionalities and features around that because you basically operate it through an app within the phone. And I think that's genius.
I think a lot of our biggest difficulty and our biggest challenge will be getting our message across and educating people about technology such as ours because they don't know it's happening. Like so, I alluded to
That's true. That's very true.
I alluded to the network being switched. So the PSTN network switch off, which is in 2025. So all of the customers on any old analog public switch telephone network, the PSTN, they will all be fully digital. So that's business and home. The whole old system, copper wire system, is going to every single person in the UK, and then this is also happening across the world. Will have to be on a fully digital network. So then companies such as Devyce, who offer this now, will be in a strong position to hoover up a lot of that business. So, and our sweet spot really is the SME market. And there's millions and millions and millions of businesses in the UK and globally, and we think that we're going to be in a good position to attack that, and that's really what our investors have believed in, and they think that we're well positioned to do that. Yeah, so we want to be ahead of the queue and ahead of the curve when it comes to that moment in 2025.
Yeah. One thing I've discovered is there are different type of assets that we can acquire as persons. One of them as money, the capital, yes, but there are also other types of assets, which one of them is, for example, the network asset you have, intellectual assets,
Yeah.
your energy, the time you have is a big asset. And sorry, there's a helicopter passing by. And
That's all right.
for the people listening, my windows are usually closed, but it is just so damn hot today. So excuse me for today. But anyways, what my point is, there are different types of assets that we kind of acquire when we go through business life. And can you take a look back at your own history and think about the assets you have gathered so far in your career and how those assets have helped you build this business today, get funded, and are still helping you make the right decisions and the right calls and so on and so forth?
Sure. So Devyce wouldn't exist in any way, shape, or form if it wasn't for the UK mobile network operator, or MNO, that sits behind it, which is called Stour Marine. And that's my co-founder, one of my co-founders, Leo Bartle. He was made aware in 2012 this mobile network in the UK was in financial difficulty. And he thought to himself, look, there's definitely an opportunity here, because this company owns all of the contracts, and it's in bundle, as we say, with O2, Orange at the time, Vodafone, et cetera, for voice and SMS. But also, more importantly, it owns the mobile network code, and it owns the IMSI ranges, and it owns the mobile numbers, and it owns all of this infrastructure, but it's just in a real bad way financially. So he bought it for next to nothing, where it was in debt, and has since turned the business around. And I joined him, and I invested in that company at the start. And then we both had a finance background, and he went full time. Then I jumped on a few years later, and that company now is doing around £2 million a month revenue, and suppliers to the likes of Google, Twilio, and a lot of the other West Coast internet providers for connectivity in the UK. And it's seen as a real integral part of the UK telephony space. And we thought, well, this is great. This is all brilliant. But where's the real exciting avenue that we can go down? Where's the future? And how can we leverage the assets that we have? And we looked around the world, what was happening, and some of the big CPaaS companies and the direction they were going. And we thought, well, I think there's room for a Devyce product. We have the assets we have. We need someone to build it, which is where our third and final co-founder, Ed Clayton, comes in. He's our CTO genius who builds all our tech. And we thought, let's go away and build it. It was just before the pandemic. We spoke to 100 or so business owners in recruitment, estate agency, media, PR, you name it, anyone sort of with 10 staff or above, and who were either providing their staff with personal mobiles or second handsets, or they were using their personal mobiles still. I went to all of them and said, look, if I could give you visibility on what your staff are doing at home and sort of over half your costs, would that be interesting? And I explained the technology to them, and they all said, to a man or a woman, they all said, oh my God, can you do this? And when can I have it? So we thought there's definitely something here. And then
that's a very exciting moment, isn't it? As an entrepreneur, the moment you hear that.
Yeah. And we also asked the employee side of it as well, because employees don't like carrying around a handset or having to give their personal number out to customers, and they don't want to be disturbed at the weekend. So we thought, well, it works on both sides. The employers like it and the employees like it. Let's go and build it. So, and then obviously the world ended in March 2020, but it actually helped us, because then all of a sudden, all of these people were still paying their staff, but they were all at home. They didn't have any visibility on, is that guy answering the call?
Timing, man.
Yeah. So the pandemic, whilst most people were thinking this is a bit of a disaster, for us, hybrid working and people working at home is brilliant, because sales managers and employers, they want to know or listen and see what their staff are doing. So yeah, so it came around at the right time. And so to answer your question in a very long-winded way, apologies, but yeah, so the assets that we have for the mobile network are key. We wouldn't be able to do it without it, because if we just went and built Devyce now, we'd have to go to one of the traditional operators, and a lot of our cost base would go there for buying numbers and doing all the routing, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, so we think we've got a really good package, and I think that's what the investors have believed in, that we can take it globally.
Thank you for the detailed answer. The reason I asked this question, there are a lot of entrepreneurs, first-time founders out there, and before I say that, I should say I'm a personal believer in the power of startups and the fact that they can do good for the world, create innovations and so on. It's not easy, but I think they are what we have. So I like it's almost a personal mission to me to teach more about building a business how to make a startup successful to as many people as I can. That's why Startups of London's team is focused on creating these types of contents anyway. But one of the confusions people seem to have in mass is that it is not that easy and it doesn't take that short amount of a time to build a startup. And also, there's a difference between building a startup straight out of uni versus building a startup like you have, right? With the connections, with the industry know-how, with that very specific knowledge, technological knowledge, as well as understanding the market. So I think this is a good lesson for a lot of people out there. That's why I asked, what are your assets which enable you to be successful in this business? And if we were to invert this, the question would be, let's not go in there, but just hypothetically speaking, the question would be, what type of a company would you build if you were a fresh graduate out of college with none of the assets that you had acquired in the past years? I would assume it would be a very different type of a business with a different
Yeah.
mode of
I mean,
success.
yeah, I mean, we were in the fortunate position where we had some really good foundations to build upon, and we knew that we could take time, and everything in telephony takes time. You need to see what people want, build something that people want, and go and provide it exactly how they want it, which we're still not at. So we're onboarding clients at the moment with 30, 40, 50 seat businesses, and we're having calls with them, and they're telling us, well, go and build this for us, go and add this feature, go and add this feature. They say, we love your portal, but if you could add this and this, we'll take it and we'll recommend you, which is great news for us. We want companies to come on and go, wow, this is brilliant, and really, really enjoy it. And we're not there yet, and it takes time. And yeah, so we're all
If you're on the right track, that's what matters. You listen to your customers.
Indeed, yeah. I mean,
That's going to be useful for you.
depressingly enough, we're all three of us are all 40 next year, so we're in a different stage of life, and I think that Devyce is everything for us, and our partners and children are more than aware that it takes up a lot of our time, but we wanted to do it properly, not rush a product out, because this is sort of going to be hopefully our legacy, which is what we want to provide to people, right? So yeah, it's very different starting a business fresh out of university, and there's with a great idea and doing it that way, and it's all things move a lot quicker in that environment. Whereas we are coming off the back of a longer career in an industry where we've built up a lot of know-how and got the assets, and then we're going to build on top of that. So it's a slower start. And I say slow start, I mean, at the end of our first year, we were probably doing around, at the end of 2021, probably around just over £20,000 a month of recurring revenue, with a very small marketing budget and happy clients. But now we're coming to the end of the YC process, and we're going to go through the demo day at YC and get a lot more money for our seed raise. We're now going to accelerate very quickly, and that curve will go a lot quicker, because it's all about how quickly you get to the next stage. And yeah, so we think we're in a really good position to do that.
Nick, we are running out of time, but I have one final question.
Yeah.
This seems to be really important for all businesses. And interestingly enough, this is one of the things that really does not change that much through time. So if you were to build a business in 1930s versus today, it is like this aspect of building a business is always a challenge, and is always, I think, similar in some ways, which is the relationships you have with your co-founders and how you're able to work through problems and make good quality decisions together as a team, not overstrain the relationships and so on. Because a lot of businesses usually do fail because they simply cannot get this right. This culture of sometimes peaceful pushbacks and healthy disagreements and a certain amount of vulnerability that follows challenging your teammates, but all in a balance and with the intention of helping the business. How do you think, how would you rate yourself and your team in that regard? And what are the things that you think that you're doing right? So it can be an example for other businesses. What are the things that you're working on with regards to having great relationships between the three co-founders you have?
So I think it's unusual to have, first of all, I completely agree with startups run into issues with co-founders and disagreements, etc. And I think having three co-founders is actually quite unusual, but it works for us because
YC recommends three founders, by the way.
I wasn't aware of that. I didn't know. The only reason I think is just because the majority of the YC founders on our batch, there are only two. So having three is quite rare in our batch. But yeah, I'm not going to say that you're wrong there. But
Paul Graham, the founder, was he was saying three is the best number in his opinion, because the third person usually breaks the deadlocks when there's a disagreement.
Yeah. So that was exactly what I was about to get into. So Leo and I we've known each other for 30 years. He's my best friend, or certainly one of my very, very closest friends. He's godfather to my son. So we have a very frank relationship. So
Amazing. That's just important.
and sometimes and obviously we can say pretty much whatever we want to each other, and if it annoys the other person, it's forgotten about the next day. So that's really fortunate that we have that relationship, and it works with Ed as well because Leo's known Ed for a number of years, not quite on that level, but Ed is also the only one of us with the technical knowledge. So he is the CTO. So whereas when he comes to us and says, "Look, guys, we've got to build this," we're building this because in this way, we have to bow to him because he knows what he's talking about and we don't. And having three of us, it's exactly right what you just said. It allows for there's no real stalemates because you're always going to get two on one, and there's always going to be the one that tips it over. So we have a healthy working relationship like that, and it's worked out really well for us. And there has been some challenging moments. There's been challenging times where obviously when no one takes a salary at the start of a startup and there's no customers coming in at the start and the tech takes a long time and you have to stick with it and you have to believe in what you're doing. And yeah, it was first of all getting those customers coming in, and when you wake up in the morning and you see you've got 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 customers that have signed up and paid overnight, and that traction starts. And I think we've now ported in
My best feeling in the world.
yeah, I think we've now ported in sort of over, I'd have to check the figures actually, I haven't checked in a while, but probably over 1,500, 1,600 numbers, business relationships and customers from the other UK networks, which is huge for us. So yeah, it's getting better, but there were challenging times, and we overcome, and you have to stick with it because we all believed in this so
Yeah.
passionately since day one. And having the three of us and having a really good relationship, it's worked well. We've had times where we've disagreed, and if anyone says that you have a startup and your co-founders all agree all the
It's
time
about
that they're
how
lying.
you disagree, right?
Yeah, they're lying, and we've disagreed, and people have fought their corners, and some people have had to back down, but you're not going to get everything right all the time, and we think that we're doing the right way, and we're learning all the same time. So, but yeah, so it's the three of us seem to be working well. It's good. It's good so far. I mean, my wife will probably. I speak to Ed so much. I speak to Leo so much, and my wife's like, guys. She's like, when we sit down after dinner, you go and have a 2 hour call with Ed on something, or you speak to Leo for an hour and a half walking the dog, and it's yeah. So I think
I've been
fam, and
there. I've been there.
yeah, and I feel guilty because but you don't get to spend as much time. But again, at the same time, because you work for yourself, you do
Yeah.
get the luxuries where you can sort of say, okay, if you say to Leo and Ed or the guys, do you know what, Friday afternoon, I'm going to go and spend it with my kids, and you get that. So there are big pros and cons, but you do get that as well. So it's good.
Looks like a healthy relationship, Nick. I'm really happy for you and for the team. It seems Devyce, by the way, for the people who would like to visit the website, it is devyce.com, device.com. And I think the business seems to be very healthy and it's like the future is bright for you, it seems. I'm really happy to hear about this. You have a lot of things going for the business. You have a good base, a good problem you're attacking. You have good proof from your customers and from the market. And this space is definitely ripe for innovation. It's really difficult to read how people will act around their communication habits because it seems to be in a wild flux over the last 10, 15 years. But definitely this is something I would consider using as a business. That's usually my benchmark, right? That's the simplest logic, which sometimes is the best. Is this useful for me? Would I use this as a business owner? Would I use this as an individual? And my answers seem very positive. As long as it's not too expensive, I would most probably give this a go. So I think this is really, really encouraging. And thank you for taking the time for this chat. Unfortunately, we are out of time. If you have any
Sure.
final comments, I would love to have them.
Yeah, just thank you for the kind words. Obviously, with startup life, as you know, things can take a turn for the worse very quickly. But touch wood, we're in a good position at the moment, and growth's well. And yeah, we're really encouraged for the future, and we just hope we think we're positioned ourselves well to, as you say, to take advantage of that sort of flux and moving landscape of the telephony industry. So
Yeah.
yeah, we think we're well placed. So thank you very much for having me on.
No, no worries. I mean, for 100%, you are going to have issues. Because having worked with so many businesses, there isn't a world where you don't run into problems, but it just seems you are and the team is incredibly capable to overcome those problems, which is what is, I think, the really encouraging thing here. So
thank you very much.
I would say Devyce is like, if you were a publicly traded company, I would go and buy some of your stocks right now. But
Yeah. So one last point before we leave, and it happened. It happened 2 days ago. One of our customers rang after he had the demo and after he'd been taking our product for a while, and he said, "Do you have an investment deck? Can I invest in your seed round at the end of September?" And that was really for us. That was, and he's not a big investor. He's a small. It would be a small check,
But
a small
that's
investor.
a vote of confidence, no?
Yeah. So a customer wanting to invest. That was like the best news we've had in ages. So yeah. So that was really great.
Nick, thanks for coming on. Pleasure to have you.
Awesome. Cheers, Ozan. Thank you very much.